Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the Pickle module in Python. And I know that calling it Pickle is quite funny because you pickle and unpickle stuff. But in many ways, you're taking something, putting it into a jar, pickling it, and then taking it out again later and restoring it to its original form. So Pickle is in some ways quite a bit like JSON. So JSON is text serialization and Pickle's binary. So what that means is when you encode it, JSON is text and Pickle uses different characters to represent stuff. You can read JSON and make sense of what it means, but you can't with Pickle. JSON is used outside of Python, for example in web requests, whereas Pickle is Python specific and you won't see it anywhere else. JSON can't represent everything, mainly lists, dictionaries, and then kind of the atomic data types, whereas Pickle can represent almost anything. When you deserialize, so convert JSON back into code, it's not risky because the JSON is just text, whereas Pickle, you could create a risk to your code. So don't ever pickle something unless you know the source it's coming from. And then like JSON, Pickle has a pickle.load and a pickle.dump to save. So we're going to start by importing Pickle and JSON. And then I'm also going to import the date from datetime. And we're going to create a person class, which we're then going to pickle. Person. And we'll give it a constructor, which will have a self and it'll have some data. And you'll see why I've put the 2 stars there a bit later. And we're actually going to save this data by setting it as the self method. And then we'll save the name. We'll create a date of birth for a person. And we're going to use the date. And we're going to spill the date of birth. And you'll see kind of what this means in a minute. But the date of birth from the data is going to be a list so that we can save it using JSON, and then that list is going to be converted into 3 different values which we're then putting into the date of birth object. The job is going to be the data job, and the skills are going to be the skills, and this is going to remain a list, so we're not going to convert it. And it will be nice to create an age property, and we're going to call it a property using this decorator, because when you get someone's age, it's an attribute rather than a function that generates their age. So this will just look a bit nicer to print. And of course we need the self keyword, even though it's a property. And so we'll get today's date and then work out how far away they are from today's date. So we'll work out the number of years that have passed. And because the date of birth is a date object, it has a year attribute, as does today. And then we want to check if date has passed yet. So if this person's had a birthday this year, and if they haven't, we want to subtract 1 from the year. And so to do that, we'll compare today's date and the day. And by putting it in a tuple, it compares the tuple values in order. And then we'll put in the date of birth month and date of birth day. And then this should give us an integer. Then we also want to convert the person into a string, so we can just print the person without worrying about anything. So we'll define a magic method for the string. And we need to return a string. So we'll say, hello, my name is, and then put in the name. And I'll say, I am, and then put the age. Years old. And then on a new line we'll put I am a, and then put the job in. And my main skill is, and then we'll put the first item in the skills list. And then we'll use .format, and we'll spill the data because that's got the name, the job, and the skills. And then we'll have to say that the age, which isn't defined, is self.age. And we don't need to put the property, so we don't need to put the brackets because this is a property. So we can create a person, and we'll say that they're a person. And they can have a name which is fictional person. They can have a date of birth, and this is going to be 1st of January 2001. And so when we put this date of birth in here, it's just going to put in the arguments 2001, 1 and 1, because this is going to create a date object. Then we want to put a job, and we'll put in a coder, and then skills, coding, maths, and Python. And then we can just print person because we've got this string method. And we can run that, and it says, hello, my name is fictional person, and I'm 19 years old. I'm a coder, and my main skill is coding. So that's worked really well. But now we want to be able to save this person for later. So we should probably give them a save method. So at the end here, we'll put save. And when we call the save, it will save them. Actually, maybe we want a file name as well. And we're going to say that this file name won't have an extension yet, because we'll put one in. So first we're going to open the file we're going to save, and we'll start with JSON. So we'll open a JSON file. And we want to write to this file, so we need to specify that, and we'll call it JSON file. And then we'll use the JSON.dump, and we'll put in self.data, because this contains all the data about the person and can be serialized. And we need to put that the file is JSON file. Then we want to do something similar with Pickle, so I'll just duplicate it. So that this time the file extension should be .pickle, unless you're using Python 2, in which case it's .pkl. And because Pickle is binary serialized, this needs to be a B, so we can write bytes, and it would probably help if we called it Pickle file, and call this Pickle file. Rather than the data, we can just dump the whole object, so we don't need to specify that it's the data. And of course we want to use Pickle. So then we can just save the person as person. And you can see it's created a person.json and a person.pickle. And if we look at the JSON first, so they've got a name, a date of birth, a job, and we can see their skills. And this is text format, and it's human readable, which is quite nice. So if we were then to send this to someone who had the same code, then they could see this fictional person, and they could check first that it was a real person and we weren't trying to send them some data that had some fake information. Because this is JSON, you can also send it using web applications, so it doesn't have to be used just in Python. Whereas if we look at this, and we'll open it anyway, you can see that not much is clear. I mean, you can see the job and the coder and then the skills, but it's not exactly clear. And if you wanted to find the date of birth, you can see that we've got a date time, date, but there's nothing to suggest kind of any day there. So now we'll no longer save the person, and we'll load the person. So we'll create a static method called from JSON, and we'll start with that. So we need to declare that it's a static method, and it doesn't have a self keyword, but we do need the JSON. and we want to just return a person using this JSON information, which will become the data. So what we can then do is open this person.json file, and we don't need to specify the R because that's the default format. We then want to say that our person is equal to, and then it can be a person from JSON, and the JSON is going to be JSON.load and then JSON file, and then we can just print this person, and we can see that it's loaded the JSON exactly as we wanted. And then we could create a static method that converts the person from Pickle, but that's not really needed, because if we copy this using parcel.pickle, and this will be instead we can just say that the person is just pickle.load and then the pickle file, and then we also need to specify here that it's binary encoded, so we need to put in RB, and now we can see that it's loaded the person as a class immediately, and you can see that it's generated a person using this, and that's really nice. It might also be nice to see what the actual JSON is, so we could create kind of a property that generates the JSON. And this can give us the JSON dumps because we're not saving it to a file of the data. And then we could create a pickle property of this person, and this can return a pickle dumps of self, and it could be the data, but then we just load back in the data, which isn't that helpful. And then we could load the person and print their JSON and their pickle. And you can see the JSON is a very nice string which you can understand, and the pickle is a series of binary encoding which is very difficult to read. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. You've created a person class as well as some files that contain this person class. Of course they don't have to be called a fictional person. Hopefully you've learned a lot about Pickle and JSON dumping, and I'll see you again same time next week. Till then.